You thought you knew Raiders of the Lost Ark. You thought it was all adventure snakes, and that fedora your dad tried to imitate. But what if I told you the most iconic scene, the melting Nazi face, was timed not with music or math, but with a playing card flicked into the air by Steven Spielberg himself? That Indy's whip wasn't the only thing cracked behind the scenes. Welcome to the weird, the uncomfortable, the hilariously accidental. This isn't just trivia, it's a walk through the absurdly beautiful chaos that made Raiders the pulpy masterpiece you didn't know you were obsessed with. Buckle up, you're about to rewatch it differently. And just before we dive in, I'm on the road to 1,000 subscribers as a small channel. If you'd like to help me keep digging, hit that subscribe button. It truly means a lot. Here are 15 mind-blowing facts you didn't know about Indiana Jones. Raiders of the Lost Ark. 1. The card trick that made the melting faces. Spielberg timed the infamous face-melting climax using a playing card. During storyboarding, he'd flip a card mid-air as a makeshift cue, a low-budget, lo-fi timing tool. That snap of paper became the real-world beat that dictated when Nazi faces would bubble, shrivel, and explode. No high-tech trigger, just practical effects and an impromptu flip. The card's flip became the metronome for horror. It's odd to think one of cinema's most iconic death scenes was orchestrated not by high-tech gear or screams, but by a Vegas flourish. One flick, one shriek, one masterpiece of melting, all thanks to a simple card. 2. Ford couldn't swim. Cue the bodyguard. Harrison Ford, whip-wielding badass, couldn't swim during Raiders. In the waterfall scene, his character leaps into deep water, but the actor, he panicked. Spielberg had to station a hidden scuba diver just off camera, assigned to keep Ford from drowning. The diver stayed submerged, acting as a human lifeguard. If Ford sank too deep or flailed, the diver would surface and pull him out. No questions asked. The shot was wide, and danger loomed. That entire sequence, which feels effortless on screen, teetered on real risk. The rugged adventurer was only rugged with a safety net underwater, holding everything together off-screen. 3. A chicken that crossed the stage. You probably missed it. In the bustling Cairo marketplace scene, a chicken wanders behind Indy. It's not trained, it's not a joke, it just happened. The bird wandered into frame mid-take, twice, and instead of cutting, Spielberg leaned in. The unexpected poultry stroll gave the scene a touch of spontaneity, adding lived-in texture to a set built for controlled chaos. That unscripted clucker clucking its way into cinematic immortality exemplifies Raiders' central paradox. Meticulously constructed mayhem laced with accidental genius. Spielberg loved letting accidents live. That chicken, it wasn't a prop, it was the film's feathery, flapping reminder that magic is messy. The fedora was almost a gunner hat. Indiana Jones almost didn't wear the fedora. Early designs had him in a leather pilot's cap, complete with chin strap and goggles. Think more airplane mechanic than globe-trotting archaeologist. Spielberg vetoed it. He wanted shadow, mystery, and myth. The wide-brimmed fedora delivered it all. It obscured Indy's eyes, cast drama across his brow, and, crucially, stayed on his head while running. Costume designer Deborah Nadoolman Landis found the perfect vintage hat and aged it by stomping it, bending it, even sitting on it. The fedora didn't just complete his look, it completed the legend. Without it, he was just another dusty professor. 5. The stones were conceived in Spielberg's hot tub. While Raiders focused on the Ark, the mystical Sankara stones, featured in the sequel, originated during a brainstorming session in Spielberg's hot tub. Spielberg and Lucas often developed ideas mid-relaxation, cigars in hand. Spielberg joked that real treasure was peace and bubbles. But in that soak, they imagined glowing stones tied to ancient legends. Though not used in Raiders, that seed of thought influenced the aura of the Ark, holy objects tied to ancient faiths and buried power. The fact that bubbling water birthed supernatural plot points tells you everything about how casual genius can emerge from the strangest, steamiest environments. 6. Marion's name was changed just before shooting. Originally, she was Marion Smith. Too plain, then it was Marion Evans. Still didn't click, but Marion Ravenwood, now that had bite. Ravenwood wasn't just a name, it was a mood. Dark, independent, untamed. Spielberg and screenwriter Lawrence Kasdan landed on it just before filming began. The shift changed the way Karen Allen approached the role. Suddenly, she wasn't just a damsel or a love interest. She had lineage, mystery, myth. Ravenwood sounded like someone who could drink you under the table, throw a punch, and disappear into legend. One name change, and Marion became someone you couldn't ignore. or forget. 7. The Flaming Sword. Was an Excalibur leftover? Remember when Marion grabs a sword and sets it ablaze in Toad's face? That wasn't in the original props. The blade came from a rejected rehearsal set from Excalibur. Spielberg's team repurposed it, retrofitted it for pyrotechnics, and crossed their fingers. Lighting it was a nightmare. 3 takes, a fire crew crouched just out of frame, and a terrified Karen Allen gripping the hilt like it might bite. But it worked. The flames screamed, the villain recoiled, the shot sang, all because some medieval prop got a second life. It's the cinematic equivalent of a garage sale, yielding gold. 8. Real organ grinders scored the Venice scene. During the Venice Square scene, listen closely, there's an organ grinder, a monkey, street bustle that feels too raw to be staged. That's because it wasn't. Spielberg chose not to use a soundstage. Instead, they filmed on location with real street performers. One organ grinder didn't know he was in a movie until days later. Spielberg tipped him in cash. The chaos beneath the dialogue was authentic. Shouting vendors, clashing coins, the unpredictability of real life. That audio texture made the scene feel ancient and alive. It's not just ambiance, it's embedded chaos, layered to make your memory believe it. 9. The truck chase nearly didn't happen. The legendary truck chase, Indy dragged under the vehicle, clinging to his whip, almost got cut. Budget constraints had producers eyeing it as expendable. Ford, recognizing its narrative weight, pleaded to keep it. Spielberg insisted they shoot it practically, with real vehicles tearing through Tunisia's sun-scorched roads. The stunt team designed hidden rigs beneath the truck for safety. One wrong move and it was hospital time. But the gamble paid off. That scene became the film's action crown jewel. Without it, Raiders might have lost its pulse. What could have been a forgotten casualty of finances instead became pure cinematic adrenaline. 10. Melting Nazis were made of bread dough. Those grotesque Nazi death scenes, not CGI, bread dough. For the climactic melting faces, special effects, artist Chris Wallace created layered prosthetics from gelatin, latex, and dough. The team used heat lamps to simulate divine wrath. One take, hours to set up, one gooey miracle. The temperature had to be just right. Too low, it stiffened. Too high, it caught fire. A fire extinguisher sat inches off frame. The end result? Faces bubbled like cheese pizza in hell. And yes, some crew members vomited. Moral of the story? Never underestimate what you can do with a heat lamp, bread, and brilliant madness. 11. Indiana's Ark was a late addition. In early drafts, Indiana Jones didn't change. He was a static rogue, snarky, academic, a glorified grave robber. Spielberg pushed for emotional evolution. The solution? Let him doubt, let him lose. The moment he tells Marion to close her eyes while the Ark obliterates their enemies is a pivot. Intellect giving way to reverence. That scene wasn't just spectacle, it was redemption. Indy began as a man who believed in nothing sacred. By the end, he feared the very power he sought to possess. The whip cracks the same, but the soul holding it has changed, and that changed everything. 12th, Belloc's menace was whisper-coached by Wells. Paul Freeman's portrayal of Rene Belloc oozes aristocratic menace, but one of his most chilling moments, the breathy, intimate threats to Marion, almost fell flat. Spielberg wanted more unease, less bluster. The inspiration came from Orson Welles, who allegedly whispered to Freeman off-set, "Don't raise your voice, drop it." That whisper coached Freeman into lowering his tone, slowing his cadence, becoming snake-like. The result? A villain who didn't shout to scare you, but slithered into your skin. It's one of those eerie performances made iconic not through volume or violence, but through the terrifying calm of someone who already knows he'll win. 13. Ford forgot the sword scene and improvised gold. In the Cairo marketplace, a sword-wielding assassin appears, spinning his blade theatrically. The original script called for an epic whip v sword duel, but Harrison Ford was battling dysentery. Exhausted, he joked, "Can't I just shoot the guy?" Spielberg laughed and said yes. Ford drew, fired, and walked off frame. One shot, no stunt choreography. The swordsman collapsed. The crew roared. That scene, born from literal stomach cramps, became one of the film's most iconic moments. Irony, the assassin's training went to waste, but Ford's illness gave cinema a timeless gag. A day ruined by diarrhea ended with action movie immortality. 14. The Ark was glued with chocolate syrup. When the Ark is pried open and strange substances ooze out, what you're seeing isn't ancient wrath, it's chocolate syrup. The goo binding the Ark's lid was a mix of corn syrup, brown dye, and Hershey's. It photographed perfectly. Thick, mysterious, sinfully rich. Spielberg insisted on multiple takes, which meant Ford and the crew spent hours sticky, sweating under lights. By wrap, the set smelled like a dessert bar gone wrong, but the syrup held, literally. It glued the Ark's dramatic visuals together. When the divine meets dessert, you get Hollywood's sweetest secret weapon dripping through your sacred relic. 15. The map room mirrors real coordinates. When Indy places the staff in the map room and sunlight reveals the Ark's location, that isn't just movie magic. It's based on actual geography. The coordinates correspond to real sites near the ancient city of Tanis, Egypt. Lucas demanded archaeological grounding for the set design. The ceiling constellations, historically accurate to 1936 skies. Even the angles of light were studied to reflect plausible ancient surveying techniques. What feels like Hollywood myth is rooted in obsessive realism. Raiders may fly with fantasy, but its bones, maps, stars, ruins are built on genuine excavation, fiction dressed in facts. That's its true lost art. So now you know the face melting came from bread dough, the Ark leaked chocolate syrup, and Indiana Jones couldn't even swim without a guy hiding underwater to save him. What looked like divine myth was often just practical effects, on-the-fly rewrites, and one very sweaty Harrison Ford with stomach cramps. But maybe that's the point. Raiders wasn't meant to be perfect. It was meant to feel found, like treasure unearthed in dust and chaos. Every accidental moment, every behind-the-scenes scramble made it human, and somehow more mythic for it. Because legends like fedoras are best when they're a little dented.
Come on!
The Lost Boys opens with glittering sand, neon fangs, and a saxophone that feels possessed. But behind the eyeliner and leather jackets, the real bite is in the details you never noticed. Forgotten costumes became character arcs, bronchitis became performance gold, a fog machine almost hospitalized someone. This isn't just an 80s vampire movie, it's a genre accident that turned iconic through chaos, grief, and a little eyeliner sweat. You thought you knew Santa Carla, but here's what you missed when you looked away from the screen. And if you like your trivia dark, weird, and full of accidental genius, hit subscribe. We dig up the stuff they buried behind the scenes, so you never watch a classic the same way again. Here are 15 mind-blowing facts you didn't know about the Lost Boys. 1. The accidental grunge of Sam Emerson. Jason Patric was late. Really late. So late, in fact, that he showed up on set in whatever he'd thrown on. Ripped denim, faded band tee, and a trench coat he borrowed from a cousin. Director Joel Schumacher saw him and said, "That's it. That's Sam." The stylist tried to clean him up, but Schumacher waved her off. The vibe was already perfect. Post-divorce teenager who reads comics, listens to The Doors, and probably sleeps in that jacket. From that day forward, Sam Emerson's style wasn't costumed. It was canonized. What you thought was a stylistic choice was just a panicked actor in yesterday's clothes, but it stuck. Sometimes your mistakes become your mythology. Second, Kiefer's cough was real, and Viral David's voice has that raspy menace, like he gargled asphalt and malice. But Kiefer Sutherland didn't rehearse that growl. It rehearsed him. He had bronchitis during filming, and the croak in his voice was straight-up infection. The heat, fog machines, and ocean air didn't help, but Schumacher saw it and leaned in. David wasn't supposed to sound sick, but the cough gave him a weary authority, like a centuries-old predator tired of pretending to be human. Watch it again and listen closely. His inhale before the word Michael is a cough dressed up as gravitas. Vampirism didn't give David that voice. California humidity and Sutherland's real-life misery did. Horror, after all, loves a good cough. 3. The Frog Sisters that almost were. Edgar and Alan Frog are the macho vampire hunting, comic reading, camouflage-wearing heart of the Lost Boys. But originally, they were girls. Early drafts had two tough, sarcastic sisters who ran the comic shop and warned Sam about Santa Carla's undead nightlife. Think River Phoenix meets Joan Jett. But as casting moved forward, Schumacher flipped it, casting Corey Feldman and Jameson Newlander instead, infusing them with fake Rambo bravado and serious anti-vampire paranoia. Still, remnants of the original girl duo echo in the script. Their fierce loyalty, dry wit, and side-eye skepticism never quite got rewritten. Somewhere in a parallel timeline, the Lost Girls saved Santa Carla. But in this one, the Frog Brothers just screamed louder. The soundtrack that moonwalked away, Picture this, the opening of The Lost Boys, boardwalk lights flickering, and Thriller blaring over the ocean wind. That was the plan. Michael Jackson's opus was pitched as the theme, riding the wave of supernatural pop perfection. But the licensing fell through. Costs, complications, and creative control. So they pivoted. Enter Echo and the Bunnymen's cover of People Are Strange and Gerard McMahon's haunting Cry Little Sister. That backup plan? It didn't just work, it rewrote the sound of teenage horror. What could have been another MJ-powered montage became a gothic anthem for misfits. Ironically, losing Thriller gave The Lost Boys a sound all its own, lonelier, grittier, and perfect for creatures who never die but never grow up either. 5. Santa Carla was a lie. Santa Carla doesn't exist, not officially. And not the way the Lost Boys painted it. The murder capital of the world was stitched together from various California towns, most notably Santa Cruz. But the city, still haunted by real-life serial killings in the 70s, almost refused filming. Locals worried it would reignite fear or mock tragedy. Schumacher promised sensitivity and stylized fantasy. So Santa Cruz played dress-up, fog machines, neon signs, and prop graffiti transformed it. The boardwalk scenes are real, but many interior shots were filmed hours away in sets built to match. The eerie energy of Santa Carla is part fabrication, part haunted geography. It's a city that doesn't exist, but somehow still creeps into your dreams. 6. Diane Wiest's garage burnout. Lucy Emerson, the sweet, overwhelmed single mom who tries to hold her family together while unknowingly dating a vampire, was supposed to be all soft edges. But Diane Wiest had other plans. In one garage scene, she quietly revved the family car and laid down a rubber-streaked burnout. Schumacher didn't call cut, he loved it. That one rebellious moment never made the final cut, but it changed Lucy's arc. Wiest leaned into a subtle, emotional toughness. The grief under her smile, the fire behind her maternal instincts. She wasn't just mom. She was someone who'd lost a life, relocated for her kids, and maybe had a little Raj of her own under the surface. Vampires weren't the only threat. 7. Bloodshot eyes, pure pain. David and his vampire gang have those blazing red eyes that look like they were forged in hell. But those weren't computer effects, they were real contact lenses. Huge, rigid, painful ones. The kind you can barely see through. Corey Feldman once said they felt like tiny plastic dinner plates. The actors could only wear them for a few minutes at a time before tearing up. Sometimes, the scenes where the vamps look like they're crying blood, not makeup, just pure eye torture. Still, those crimson stares became iconic. They didn't just signal monster, they screamed, "This is what immortality looks like when it hurts." If you watch closely, you'll catch a wince, a blink, and a very real tear. 8. Corey Haim's Michael Jackson. Shrine offset, Corey Haim was deep in the grip of MJ mania. He wasn't just a fan, he was a disciple. In his trailer, he built a full-blown Michael Jackson shrine. Posters, cassette tapes, memorabilia, even a sequined glove nailed to the wall. Castmates joked it looked like a pop star altar. In a film where his character scoffs at vampires and reads comics, Haim spent his breaks dancing to Billie Jean and practicing MJ moves. It added a strange layer to his performance. Sam Emerson feels like a kid who lives in two worlds, one full of monsters, the other full of moonwalks. Watch his wardrobe again. Some of those style choices weren't scripted, they were worshipful tributes. 9. Plunger Man. Unscripted chaos. There's a bizarre background moment during the pier sequence. Blink and you'll miss it. A drunk guy stumbling out of a diner bathroom with a plunger on his head. That wasn't in the script. It was Billy Wirth, off-duty and bored, pulling a prank on the crew. He wandered into the shot mid-scene and Schumacher let it ride. What could have been a blooper became background texture, adding an accidental absurdity to the film's eerie tone. It's one of many offbeat flourishes that gives The Lost Boys its surreal vibe. Not everything in Santa Carla is supernatural. Some of it's just dumb humans with plungers and zero shame, which, let's be honest, is its own kind of terrifying. 10th, Fog Machine Freakout. That dreamy smoky pier, it's made of two things, salt air and one misbehaving fog machine. During a night shoot, the machine malfunctioned, spewing out hot, pressurized mist. One extra, standing too close, panicked, and flailed so hard he took down part of the set. The crew scrambled, lights crashed, cameras tipped. Schumacher didn't yell, he laughed, because the footage, once cleaned up, was magic. The extras' terrified lurch became part of the scene. The chaos gave the moment an edge no choreographed stunt could match. Santa Carla was never supposed to feel safe. That fog, unplanned and scalding, became a symbol of the film itself. Beautiful, unpredictable, and one mechanical failure away from full-blown horror. 11. Yes, those were real leeches. In a film brimming with supernatural horror, one of the grossest moments is all natural. When Sam and the Frog Brothers storm the vampire's lair, they use garlic, water guns, and, yep, leeches. Real, live, squirming leeches. No CGI, no fake rubber props. These were actual bloodsuckers wrangled by a special effects guy with way too much enthusiasm. The actors weren't thrilled. Feldman nearly refused to touch them, but Schumacher insisted, if you're going to kill vampires, you need to get your hands dirty. The resulting discomfort worked. Their squeamish reactions, totally authentic. What's scarier than vampires? A rubber boot full of biting worms, stuck to your bare ankle under hot lights while someone yells, "Action." 12th, screaming seagulls, uncredited sound designers. That piercing, echoing screech in Santa Carla's night air. It wasn't engineered in post, it was seagulls. Real ones, recorded near the pier, then looped and distorted into a chorus of undead whales. The birds became accidental sound designers, shrieking so loudly during night shoots that the crew started calling them the choir. Schumacher didn't fight it, he embraced it, layered their calls into the soundscape, stretched and reversed them until they sounded less like nature and more like nightmares. Every time you hear that audio swell before a jump scare, you're hearing gulls in distress, twisted by audio engineers into the cries of lost souls. Turns out, the murder capital of the world had help from its ecosystem. 13. That tattoo? Continuity nightmare. Jason Patric's character, Michael, has a distinct tattoo, a snake wrapped around a dagger that you probably never paid much attention to. But the crew sure did. It changed shape, it vanished. It reappeared in reverse. Why? Because they couldn't decide on the design, and some days they forgot to reapply it. Other days, it smeared off during makeup, so they redrew it differently. Continuity be damned. There are scenes where Michael has a tattoo on one arm, then none, then a different one on the other arm. Fans have tried to explain it as a vampire illusion, but no, just a production flub that somehow adds to the mystique. Michael's in flux, body, and soul. Why not his ink? 14. The bridge scene. Almost died. That iconic shot, the vampires dangling from a fog-covered train bridge, tempting Michael to let go, was nearly cut from the script. The crew didn't think they could afford it. The location was remote, the lighting expensive. Insurance hated it, but Schumacher fought for it. On the final night of filming, with 2 hours left, they rigged the shot and ran it twice. That taunting drop, Michael's scream, the cold steel echo, it was done in a rush, but it worked. The moment encapsulates the entire film. The seduction of danger, the leap into darkness, the loss of gravity. It almost didn't exist. But without it, The Lost Boys wouldn't have its most mythic, breathtaking heartbeat. 15. David's laugh was Corey Feldman's idea. That eerie, guttural laugh David lets out just before chaos breaks loose. It doesn't belong to Kiefer Sutherland. Not entirely. Corey Feldman was messing around between takes, mimicking Bela Lugosi and Max Schreck when Schumacher overheard it and said, "That, record that." They looped it over David's final confrontation, adding layers to the villain's persona. It's not just a laugh, it's the voice of the genre itself, echoing back through decades of vampire lore. Feldman, who was barely out of puberty, created a signature sound for one of the most iconic teen villains ever. And like most things in The Lost Boys, it wasn't planned. Just an offhand moment of weird genius captured forever in stereo. The Lost Boys is a time capsule stuffed with blood capsules, broken props, and unscripted brilliance. It's a film where seagulls scream like demons, eyeliner defines morality, and half the magic came from bronchitis, fog accidents, and teenage improvisation. It wasn't supposed to become immortal, but it did. Not because it was perfect, but because it bled style, risk, and weird humanity from every frame. So the next time you ride that boardwalk or hear "Cry Little Sister" echo from a passing car, remember, behind every vampire's snarl is probably a forgotten prop, a reused scream, and a 17-year-old actor making it up as they go. Welcome back to Santa Carla. Sleep tight.